Rich person. Today, I would like to talk to you about what poor people always do and rich people never do. Many people want to become rich, but at the same time, they engage in actions that will never make them rich. Many people ask what needs to be done to become rich. In fact, first of all, stop doing what poor people do, and in this way, you will become rich faster. I would like to talk about this today. In this video, I have gathered 9 things that poor people always do and rich people never do. And it doesn't matter what nationality or which countries. The same thing happens all over the world. Poor people always do this, rich people never do this. So let's go through the points. First, living beyond one's means. This is something poor people generally always do. Living beyond one's means is when people buy things they cannot afford. I really don't understand people who use credit to buy an iPhone or use credit to buy cars. And the worst manifestation of this is when weddings or some events are held with borrowed money. This is just a direct path to poverty and destitution. And wealthy people don't do this. As a rule, the traits of wealthy people and why they became wealthy. Because they know how to live within their means. If we consider the reason why poor people live beyond their means. Well, let's take the same example of a wedding or buying a car on credit. It's because poor people pursue other people's goals. They want to have what others have, to have what others have. This is the first reason. If you want to stop being poor, the first step is to define your goals and follow your own goals, not someone else's. And your goal is to become rich, not to buy a car or have a wedding on credit. And the second reason why poor people do this is because very often poor people do not understand the cost of ownership. What is that? I will explain with a simple example. Let's say you buy a car for, say, $50,000, and poor people think that this is their expense. In reality, their expenses are not $50,000. $50,000 is just the initial cost. Then come the taxes. Next come the cost of spare parts for this car, the cost of consumables, gasoline, lubricants, and so on. That is, it goes on and on. When you buy anything, always think about the cost of owning that thing. The second point. Poor people always try to save and conserve, while rich people mainly try to invest. And here is the fundamental difference, and this happens in all countries. The thing is, if you work on reducing your expenses, it's like a narrowing funnel. You reduce expenses, and as your expenses decrease, surprisingly, your income will also decline. Therefore, there is a famous saying attributed to Rockefeller, which goes, "Do not fear large expenses, fear small incomes." And this is precisely the rule by which wealthy people live. Poor people try to save and put aside money, deposit it, and so on. Rich people are always trying to invest. These are two different approaches. Therefore, always work on increasing capital. Not a single person has become rich thanks to deposits, and no one has become rich through saving. All wealthy people became so only thanks to increasing income. And the third point, this is a reluctance to learn and develop. As a rule, poverty is not something undeserved or unfair. As a rule, poverty is an indicator of certain vices that a person has. For example, pride when he thinks he knows everything, either laziness when he doesn't want to learn something new, or envy when he doesn't want others to have something and he himself doesn't want to develop, and so on. This is the difference I noticed in all poor and rich countries. Rich people are usually those who constantly develop. And it often happens that these are not character traits, but the traits of the activity of wealthy people. Wealthy people are quite active, and because of their activity, they take many actions. Due to these actions, they make many mistakes and failures. Mistakes and failures are the main drivers of self-development. It is quite possible that wealthy people become such due to their activity and learning many lessons from their mistakes and failures. Poor people, as a rule, avoid risks and generally do not want to learn and develop. This may be due to some of their wrong or, let's say, undesirable human qualities, or because the person does not want to take risks and develop. The fourth thing that the poor always do and the rich never do is stay in the same environment. I noticed that successful people constantly change the environment in which they interact. They easily make acquaintances, they meet, they go to exhibitions, conferences, forums, and they easily make contact with strangers. While poor people, as a rule, hold back, they have some complexes. They are afraid to approach someone, they are afraid to meet someone, and this is understandable because they have low self-esteem. They think if I approach now, I might be rejected or treated poorly, and so on. But there's also an explanation for why people are mostly afraid to approach, because their inner pride doesn't allow them. And how does pride work? But pride does not allow them to face rejection, because rejection is perceived very painfully by them. And that's why poor people usually do not approach others to get acquainted, because they are afraid of being rejected. And rejection hits their pride very painfully. If you feel and see these qualities in yourself, overcome them at the roots. Just make it a rule for yourself. If I want to become rich, I must meet people. I must not be afraid to approach others. I must not be afraid of rejection. And by the way, the absence of fear or overcoming the fear of rejection is the first skill that salespeople practice in their profession. If you do not learn to receive rejection and do not learn to react to it correctly, you will never be able to sell anything to anyone. Fifth, what poor people do and what rich people don't do. Poor people, as a rule, live one day at a time. They act reactively. First an event occurs and then they act. And in this way, they are constantly solving problems that arise every day. Poor people don't even have time to plan far ahead. And the most interesting thing is, if you don't have time to plan and set long-term goals, that time will never appear. You will be like a hamster in a wheel, constantly spinning in your wheel.
I noticed that poor people
have a very short-term planning horizon, if they have one at all. Often, poor people do not have any planning at all. Therefore, living for the day is a quality inherent to poor people. Rich people, as a rule, have goals, have plans, and not just plans, they have long-term plans. The sixth point, which is typical of poor people and usually not done by rich people, poor people mainly focus on problems. They cannot look beyond the problem and certainly cannot see opportunities in problems. When problems occur in your life, do not rush to get upset. First of all, try to ask yourself a question and say, okay, this is a problem, and what opportunities does it bring? And keep your focus not on the problem. Keep your focus on its solution and the opportunities it can open for you. I've noticed that wealthy people have this trait that they look for opportunities in every problem. Yes, the severity of the problem doesn't become any less for them because of this. But they understand that behind every problem there is usually some opportunity. Moreover, in Islam it is said that behind every trial, and the problem is a trial, Allah always gives some blessing. Therefore, learn to see the blessing in any problem, in any trial. If you agree with this principle, then be sure to like and keep listening. Seventh, what poor people usually do, and rich people do not. Poor people are not willing to take risks. This is understandable. They already have few resources. What do they have to risk? But on the other hand, you can look at the same situation from a different angle and say, since you have nothing to lose anyway, why not take a risk? In fact, you don't need to risk because you have nothing to lose. And another point is that poor people misunderstand risks. They perceive risks as a possibility of loss, and wealthy people perceive risk as an opportunity to get richer. You see, the same factor, different perspectives. Therefore, learn to take risks and not just take risks thoughtlessly. This is exactly what the poor people have enough of. There is a category of poor people who do not take risks, and there is a category who take risks but take them thoughtlessly. It is important to understand here that you need to take risks, and risks that firstly have good chances and secondly have a good payoff. You need to take risks that have high chances and risks that give a big payoff or return if the situation turns in your favor. Surely. There have been times in your life when you took a risk, it worked out, and you really enjoyed it. So analyze this case to understand what risk you took. Was it a calculated risk or an uncalculated one? And was there a high probability of a successful outcome for this risk or not? Then learn from it and repeat such actions. Be sure to write your story about taking risks in the comments below. The eighth point is looking for someone to blame for your problems. What is the problem with this point? That the thing is, I've noticed that poor people always blame someone or something for their problems. It could be the weather, traffic, some shortage, the government, the president, the mayor, the boss, the neighbor, and so on. They always see the blame outside themselves. What is the problem with this approach? The thing is, when you see the blame on the outside, meaning you don't take responsibility for your actions, for your life, for everything that happens to you, then there is no reason for you to change. Because why should you change if he is to blame? If the weather conditions are to blame, if the circumstances are to blame, why should you change? And since you don't change, you go in circles and remain in the same environment. Taisi dise something is always happening to you. But when you take responsibility for your life and say, yes, I went out even in the rain and got wet. It's not the rain's fault. It's my fault. I didn't take a raincoat or didn't take an umbrella and so on. This is self-respect. Immediately, the next question arises in your mind. What do I need to do to prevent this from happening again in the future? And this is the first question from which self-development begins. Therefore, whatever happens in your life, no matter what unfavorable events occur, never blame other people or circumstances. Take responsibility for your life and ask yourself the following question. What do I need to do to prevent this from happening to me? Ninth point, what mostly, very often, or almost always poor people do and rich people do not do, they waste time. Unfortunately, poor people do not value their time, do not value their energy, do not value their attention. Therefore, they very often and a lot waste their time, resources. When resources are time and energy and their attention is wasted, they hang out on social networks, watch various videos, memes, TikToks, engage in idle conversations, discuss someone, gossip, participate in various flame wars and so on. That is, in this way, they waste time. Even those who do not waste time, they value their time, energy, and attention very low. And in this way, they remain poor. This is what does not let go of poor people and keeps them in this state. So learn to appreciate. And what does it mean to learn to appreciate? This does not mean that you go out now and tell other people, che, I'm not ready to work for this price. My price is different. They won't give you work. You'll end up without a job at all. When I say learn to value your time, energy and attention, it means instead of wasting them, invest this time, energy, and attention in your self-development and acquiring new skills, abilities, and knowledge. Attention, time, and energy spent on self-development will lead you to returns in the form of more lucrative work. Of course, the points I listed for you today require certain efforts, but no one told you that life is a comfortable walk. After all, there's a popular saying, living life is not like crossing a field. If you don't want to accept your situation, your condition, then you must do what wealthy people do. This is not even a question of wealth. The question is not to remain where you are, but if you are, of course, content and happy with what you have and content and happy with the state you are in, then, of course, continue doing what you are doing. After all, ultimately, our goal or the goal of our life is not a lot of money, but to live a happy life.